The path you will take will lead to sudden destruction. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Nubix Maximus, and I just got back from going to see The Last Jedi. Now, it is Tuesday. It is the week after opening weekend. I did not go see it on opening weekend, and the reason I did not go see it is I did not like The Force Awakens at all. I thought it was a terrible movie, and I didn't really want to go see this one. But when all of the fan backlash and everything started to happen, I wanted to be a part of this conversation, so I went today. I went after opening weekend, so I only spent $5 to get in, and I was able to get most of my emotions out because I read all the spoilers and everything. So I went in there with the intention of not being emotional and just watching the movie and seeing, okay, as a movie, how was it? That being said, there were a couple of things that really got me on an emotional level. And that emotion was anger, for the most part. So I want to cover a couple of those first, and then I'm going to go through some other thoughts here. First off, the thing that got me the most. A lot of people were talking about the Leia getting sucked out into space scene. For me, what really got me about that scene, because I knew it was going to happen, was Admiral Akbar. Literally, it was a stupid idea to kill Admiral Akbar. He's like a walking internet meme. Everybody knows him. And I know the guy that voiced him and puppeteered him died. I mean, I'm sorry that he died and everything, but you couldn't put another voice actor in there? They had Admiral Akbar in Clone Wars, and they had a guy do his voice really, really well. And it just, the whole scene seemed weird to me. And then it's just like, okay, he got a mention at least in the end, but nobody else did. And to me, it's kind of weird because it seemed like a waste of a scene. I mean, I know they wanted to do Leia with this, flying through space thing. But at the same time, there could have been a better way to do it. I mean, alright, so even if you wanted to do the scene of everybody getting sucked out, then you show a star field and have it, pan out of Leia's eye, like she just saw it in the Force, like she saw this coming, because we know
you can see things before they happen. It's a Jedi trait.
And it would have been really cool, because you could have gotten to see Leia use a Force power that was a very basic Force power, but then Leia could have looked at Akbar and been like, "It's a trap!" And then Akbar could have been like, "It's a trap!" And then Leia would have been like, "It's a trap!" And then Akbar would have sat there and been like, "Take evasive action!" And then that big cruiser would have been like, and then the TIE fighter pilots would have been like, "Look out!" And then Darth Whiny would have been like, and he's a coward, so he would have turned away, and it would have been like, but his TIE fighters are actually competent, so they would have been like, but the people on the ship would have been like, but they would have lived. And it would have been an excellent scene of showing Leia being a good leader and seeing things before they happen, and then giving direction to Akbar, who then could have done what he needed to do to save the ship. And then everybody inside would have been like, and then you would have been able to set up this thing going forward. You wouldn't have had the Laura Dern character, what was her name, Holdo, One of those. I don't know. But, I mean, she was a terrible character. She was just there to bust down Finn and yell at him and kind of get a dig at his ego and create tension that didn't need to be there. If you really wanted to do that, what you could have done is you could have had Akbar and Poe both sitting there with two completely separate ideas of how to do it, because you've got a fleet admiral and you have a fighter commander. They're going to have different ideas about how things should be done. Let them have those ideas and let them express them. And both ideas, especially if you write this correctly, which, I mean, you would need a really talented writer to do this who would be able to do good character development.
That's impossible!
But if you write this correctly, you have Poe and Akbar, who both are right from their point of view. Because Star Wars has always been about your own point of view.
Many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
And then, in the end, you can have Poe do something that helps save the Resistance, get away and stuff like that, and have Akbar do the sacrificing of his ship. okay? The hyperspace ramp, which actually was cool. It was a cool scene, and it needed to be in there. There's going to be debates forever in the Star Wars universe about whether or not a ship in hyperspace should be weaponized like that. Please enjoy. But then you would have had Akbar be the hero, and the fans all would have been like... And then the movie would have ended on a more high note. I mean, your hero would have died, but he wouldn't have just been sucked out into space like frozen sushi. He would have actually done something, and it would have been a good scene. But they didn't do that. Instead, we had Laura Dern's character sitting there in a ship, not even doing anything to try and block the transports that are leaving. I know you could say, yeah, the ship that's firing at him was really big. The ship that's firing at him was really far away. That ship should have been able to cover those things. She didn't even try. She just sort of stood on the bridge until she went and turned the ship and created a hyperspace missile. Which was a cool idea. It was a really cool scene. I was really looking forward to seeing how they did it, and it didn't disappoint. But again, that sort of might be changing how things are in the Star Wars universe. A lot of people are going to look at things in the Star Wars universe and be like, well, why didn't they just do a hyperspace ram? Why don't they have hyperspace missiles where you've just got an unguided ship that has a hyperspace engine? You just kind of aim it and then boom, right through the ship and just cut it in half and things like that. It was weird, but I thought that scene, that really got me, that Akbar just got discarded. He was a great character. I really liked that character growing up, and he just got tossed out the window, literally, like it was nothing. But it did set up the Leia Superman scene, which was ridiculous and stupid. One thing I did notice, because I was looking at it, and people will debate this, but it just looked like it from my perspective, where people was saying when Leia opens the door, everybody else should have been sucked out. There was a hallway between the door that she opened. It was like she came in and there was probably an open double door that would have closed behind her, and then she would have opened the one to get into the ship. Just what it looked like from my perspective. Another scene that just felt really weird, and it kind of pissed me off, was the whole Yoda scene. I mean, Yoda pops up, and that's fine. Yoda's a great character. We all love Yoda. But here he is popping up as a Force ghost. He looked weird. I understand it was the puppet, and people are like, oh, it's the puppet. But it just didn't look good as a puppet. I mean, it looked very strange. His speech patterns were wrong, and Yoda, I understand what they were going for was the Empire Strikes Back Yoda little kind of stuff. But Yoda was doing that because he was trying to teach Luke a lesson. In this one, Yoda's just like this psychotic imp that's just there to cause problems, and Luke's like, I'm going to burn down the Jedi Temple. The history should end. Or whatever that tree was that he was lighting on fire. And he's like, no, I can't do it. And then Yoda lights it on fire. And I almost expected him to sit there and go, watch the world burn, people like. And it was just weird. It didn't feel right. And then the whole thing with Kylo Ren, or as I like to call him, Darth Whiny, and Luke going to kill him. This was a character that risked everything because he detected a shred, a teeny tiny little shred of goodness in his father. And this is his own nephew, a child. And he's going to go and kill him? Or even consider it? That doesn't make any sense at all whatsoever. And then the scene at the end, he just kind of has this immediate turnaround and hands Leia the dice, which I'm sitting there as I'm watching him hand Leia these dice, which are actually in the original Star Wars. It's on Tatooine when Chewie goes in to the Millennium Falcon. He takes off his little bandolier, sets it down, and as he's sitting down, he hits these two little dice with his head. That's the only place that I've ever seen it, and I will try to get a picture of it right here so that I can show you. But he hands these dice to Leia, and they're supposed to be something, something sentimental, and she leaves them there But it doesn't make a difference because they faded away anyway. So it was really ridiculous and stupid. And I know it was supposed to be a throwback to fans and a nod to the people. It's like, yeah, if you really know Star Wars, you'll know where this was from. Well, that's wonderful, but it still felt stupid. And then you have him fighting Kylo Ren, okay? Darth Whiny himself. And he went out there with the intention of beating him. And he didn't do a good job, which is just weird. I mean, I know he was stalling and things like that, but he's like, I can't save him. You freaking try! You are Luke Skywalker! Now, since they were obviously going for an Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi parallel, you can deny this all you want, that's what it is. And people far better at this than me are going to start hitting the plot points over and over and over. And what lines up with what. But it is Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi together, merged in the stupidest way possible. But if you really wanted to do that, in Empire Strikes Back, especially watching it as an adult and after somebody else pointed it out, it is basically a young kid who's cocky and thinks he can take on the Dark Lord, sitting there throwing stuff at Vader, and Vader just like one-handedly deflecting and blocking and things like that. And as it goes on, the story gets more and more, Vader gets less and less patient, and finally Luke, grazes him on the shoulder, and Vader's like, all right, I've had enough of this crap, and cuts his hand off. It would have been a lot better in this movie if you had the reverse of that, okay? You've got Luke Skywalker, the hero, the legend, the Jedi Master, and you've got Darth Whiny, an arrogant, whiny, emo little brat that likes to swing a lightsaber around, that has absolutely no control over what he's doing. Have Luke just sit there and school the little brat. And they did do that for a little bit. But it only lasted for like a minute at most, maybe 2 minutes at most, and that was it. The fight between Luke and Darth Vader was like spread out over 20 minutes of movie plot. You could have done this so much better and just have Luke get to a point where it comes down and it's the opposite of him and Vader. Okay? He gets to a point where Kylo Ren is either going to kill him or Luke has to stop him. Luke has to hurt his own flesh and blood. Cut off a limb, cut off his head, cut off that stupid little smirk. And Luke makes the decision that the hero makes. Unlike Vader, who cut off his own son's hand, Luke makes the decision not to hurt Ben Solo, his own nephew, the son of his best friend. And instead he dies. And he fades away there. Instead, we're treated to a scene of Luke reconnecting with the Force just in time to make peace with the fact that he will not be the last Jedi. A untrained girl who just happens to have a few books, but seems to pick up everything just fine, so they should be okay. I'm sure she'll sit there and she'll be like, "Oh, what do you know? Jedi text. Oh, excellent. I am a Jedi Master. I'm ready to start my own Jedi training academy and start training people, because after all, I've only been at this for a week." The whole thing with Luke was very poorly thought out. Oddly enough, I kind of liked his quirky antics on Octu, especially where he like pole vaults across the thing to go fishing. To me, it felt like you could definitely tell he was still in pretty good shape. I mean, that was a really rough terrain, okay? And he was able to navigate that pretty easily, and that was difficult for an old guy, difficult for a young guy. I'm really curious how they got Leia out of the chasm at the end of the movie, too, because Rey barely was able to get down that thing. I'm really curious how they got her up that thing. But anyway, maybe she flew. Let's see, some other things in the movie that sort of stood out to me. I know people were complaining about the bombs, just gravity falling out of the bombers. There would have been a little bit of gravity there, but they wouldn't have come out with enough speed to actually really... I mean, they would have fallen. They would have fallen. You can argue it, but with the way the gravity was, that girl was on the ground on like the very bottom sitting on it, and those things were wobbling in the gravity. They were in the gravity field, and when the doors opened and the bombs fell, there would have been enough gravity to kind of push them out. I don't get that they would go very fast, though. I mean, they'd have like a second to gain speed. They maybe be moving, the acceleration of gravity is, I think it's like 32 feet per second. So they'd be going about 32 feet per second. And if you're, depending on how high you are up from that thing, that would be a lot. Wouldn't have been a better scene if the girl was the pilot and, everybody on her thing is dead, so she just decides she's just going to crash this thing loaded with explosives right into the place that it needs to go to blow this thing up? That's just my thought. Kato Bintu was, or however the heck you say the ridiculously obscure planet's name, was really kind of pointless and really, really kind of weird. It almost seemed like the whole thing there was just set up to get to Captain Phasma so that you could put Finn and Phasma together. Let's talk about Phasma. Where the hell was she for the rest of the movie? She's supposed to be this really major, this super trooper, this chrome trooper, and then she's just there for an execution, which of course they do in the James Bond villain style of, I could just kill you, but I'd rather have this long drawn, slow little execution scene so that I don't have to actually kill you, and it creates suspense. No, it doesn't. But then the fight with her and Finn was ridiculous. I mean, it was stupid. It wasn't even well thought out. It wasn't well played. And then she just falls into fire. She's probably going to be back because for some reason a new generation thinks she's the new Boba Fett. And if you're looking at it from the actual, like, what's on screen of Boba Fett, where you have this character that looks cool, does one thing, like shoots 3 lasers, maybe 4 lasers in Empire Strikes Back, and then, jumps from one ship to another, takes maybe one shot before getting his gun cut off. I don't even think he gets a shot off. Wraps the Jedi up in a cord just to have that cut down. And then gets hit in the back by the clumsy good guy who can't even see and then swallowed by the Sarlacc. That's pretty much what Phasma is. Pointless. So let's talk about that end scene, the big walkers, the Battle of Hoth scene. But we're not on Hoth, we're on Crate. It's not snow, it's salt. That scene had tremendous potential. An awful lot of potential. You got the big walkers, the really, really big walkers. I think they're calling them gorilla walkers. I've got one around here somewhere. I don't remember. It's like an MT something. But you've got those. You've got the new AT-ATs. There was this Lego for like this crab walker. It was like an AT-ST with 8 legs that you never see in the movie. And if you do, it's so far in the background that it didn't even pop up and I was looking for it. You've got this battle scene and it's no battle at all. I mean, the speeders don't even make it to the walkers. And those walkers, although they didn't really show them at all, if you've seen the toys, if their back, like if this is the head going, their back is lined with these really big canisters that look like either fuel or ammunition or something. They are ridiculously, vulnerable back there. If they had had normal Rebel speeders, they're not snow speeders. Remember, in Empire Strikes Back, they say,
Are the speeders ready?
Not yet. We're having some trouble adapting them to the cold.
If they're having trouble adapting them to the cold, they're not snow speeders. Okay? They're just speeders. Just let's settle that now, please. It's been bothering me for years. Anyway, those speeders going up against those things would have ripped them apart. The only reason, the absolute only reason that they lost was because they were getting... First off, they had the crappiest ships humanly possible. And I know you're going for things like, it's a real ragtag thing. You succeeded. Second off, they charged head first at these things. That is a dumb move. These things don't turn that fast. You sort of, pincer movement it. You go around them. That's how you get these things. And then they just all kind of die. And then the one moment where you've got a character that's about to do something, where Finn is about to ram the big cannon. The only really noble thing he's done so far, at least that's coming to mind. Now keep in mind, I've only seen Force Awakens once, so maybe I'm missing something, maybe I'm not. But he's about to get it, and then this girl rams him. And she's like, you protect what you love, and has the most awkward on-screen kiss ever. Zero chemistry between those two. Absolutely zero. None whatsoever. But she kisses him and then sort of like, I don't know, dies, passes out, flies off into space. I'm not even sure what happened there. But it's like, where does this come from? And as she's sitting there talking about you protect what you love, the base that they're trying to protect gets its door blasted open by a cannon which is supposed to be Death Star tech and looks nothing like a Death Star cannon. Doesn't have a dish. It's just got this big tube and it's like wom, 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 and puts out this single ray that barely punches through a door. Which, granted, that door, that's a thick door. A big door. Not that thick for a Star Wars universe. And it barely put a hole through that thing. I was kind of unimpressed with their Death Star tech. But they were able to blow up 5 planets with another planet that ate a sun. That's another video. I think the scene on Crate was also wasted because you had this perfect canvas for, you've got the white salt with the red whatever underneath it. And that could have been, you could have done this beautiful scene, and I think they started to, and I think they tried. They just didn't put any time and effort into it. They were doing it, and then they just kind of let it go and they stopped. You know, they really had an opportunity to make something that could have been visually beautiful, but they really just kind of glossed over it. I know in the end you've kind of got all this, the red arc going up to the Rebel base, but I think the artistry was kind of lost on it. The other thing that got me, and I know I noticed this really, really early on, and I noticed it in the trailer, and it was even more apparent to me when I was watching it in the movie, but it was because I was looking for it specifically. Force Awakens specifically took a whole bunch of scenes, and there's videos on the internet where people will play Force Awakens side by side with Empire Strikes Back. And it's basically, you'll see things like the Millennium Falcon, and it's like frame for frame the exact same thing. And it happens like 4 or 5 times inside of Force Awakens. And there are videos on the internet, and if I find one I'll put it in the comments, but I don't know that I'll find it in time. There are videos out there where people have shown these things side by side, and it's really interesting to watch because what they're doing is they're trying to give you a feeling of deja vu. You see it and you go, oh, this feels like something that I love. It's because it reminds you of Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, the original Star Wars. But it's not, and they're kind of playing on your emotions. The Falcon going through the mine is an exact copy of the Death Star run in Return of the Jedi. There are these little crystals that are out there, and the Falcon's going underneath them, and it will line up perfectly to Return of the Jedi. And the music is the exact same as Return of the Jedi. There's even a scene where the Falcon is flying, and it flies into this big chasm, and right in front of it is this enormous stalactite that looked exactly like the Death Star power core. And then you've got Darth Whiny walking into the Rebel base with the stormtroopers behind him. And that, which is weird, hit on Revenge of the Sith because that was what it looked like when Anakin was walking into the Jedi Temple. They're setting up these parallels, and it's just not really working. It doesn't work. Not for me. I mean, it's having an effect on people because people are loving these movies, but I don't know that they're catching it. And somebody who's a lot better at this than me will probably point these all out. One of the other scenes that I thought, the Snoke death. Now, first off, I had absolutely zero care about Snoke, okay? I am not one of the people that sat there doing the fan theories of who was Snoke. I did get into it a little bit, and that I thought Snoke was Plagueis. Maybe Mace Windu, but if it had been Mace Windu, that would have pissed me off. I know a lot of fans were pissed off as to how easily he got killed, and realistically, he did get killed easily. They were kind of setting him up like the Emperor, where, you didn't really need to know Palpatine's background in Return of the Jedi. He was the Emperor, and it created this wonderful little question about where's he from, how did he become Emperor, etc., etc. And that's pretty much what the prequels were for, like him or hate him. In this one, you've got Snoke, who was kind of set up that way, and then in the end, where he's got, Rey sitting there and he's doing, I can see you turning your lightsaber. And he's missing the one that's like right here and going on the metal pad. I think it's cut in half. It's good to see that they've returned to the Star Wars franchise's fascination with body part amputations. But it seemed weird, and it seemed like a waste. And then they got to the fight with the Praetorian Guard. I was looking forward to this because a lot of people were like, well, that fight was good, that fight was good. That fight was ridiculous. Okay? It was flashy, it was showy, and nobody there really looked like they knew how to fight. There were a couple of good moves, but it was all way too... It was too, wow! And that's, in the prequels you had them twirling lightsabers and things like that, but they looked threatening. These guys looked like cartoon characters or something out of a bad martial arts film. I was really disappointed with that scene. The one part I liked was, Darth Whiny catches the lightsaber, turns it on, it goes through the guy's head, comes back out. Some of the other characters. Finn, almost no real story, no reason for Finn to be there. He has some sort of magical connection with Rey where they're forming this relationship and stuff, even though they touched on that absolutely nothing at all in this entire movie. And in the end, they run up and hug one another and they're like, oh, Finn, Rey! It's like, okay, yeah, I forgot they're trying to make these two a couple. Personally, I think the couple should be Finn and Poe. I think those two really hit it off. Although, since, Finn did rescue Poe, I think they would find out that they're actually brothers in the third movie, but we'll never know. Poe went from being a competent commander to being kind of a hotshot. I like the character of Poe. Of all of the sequel trilogy characters, he's the one that I like, and he is the only one that I like. BB-8 is a soccer ball. I'm really hoping somebody will punt kick the dang thing. There was one scene where BB-8 goes flying out of something in pieces, and I'm like, oh, that was awesome. Please be dead. But he's not, so oh well. Rey. The character of Rey just seems to be overpowered. She seems to pick things up. She even made it through the fight without any kind of major injury. She's got a small cut on her arm, but that's about it. I don't really like the character, and I would not want her teaching other people. Holdo, pointless. Hux. Wow. The Empire has always been mildly incompetent, mildly, egotistical, arrogant, this almost like British feel to them. But at the same time, that arrogance and that demeanor breeds fear. When you look at somebody and they are cold and calm and looking at you and just, calmly look away and go, you may fire when ready. That's threatening, and Hux in the First Order are not threatening in any way, shape, or form. Hux in this one is a putz. He just gets thrown around like crazy. He was a putz in the first one. He's trying to be like a young Adolf Hitler, and he's failing. The way I see it, there are three types of people that see this movie. There are the people that loved it. And honestly, to those people who loved it, hold on to that. If you left this movie and you really took something from it and you're like, wow, that was great, I feel an emotion inside, whatever emotion that is, you feel good, hold on to that. That is what Star Wars is supposed to be. From the core, it's supposed to make you feel something. You're supposed to get something from it. If you got something from it, keep it. Hold it. Don't let that go. Don't let anyone tear that away from you. Not even me, nobody else. And I know what it's like to like a Star Wars movie that nobody else likes. Personally, I love the prequels.
Another pathetic life form.
I totally understand people's hatred of them. I understand the parts that they dislike. Those parts to me don't even register in a blip. I just sort of gloss over them and get to the parts that I do like, which what I like in those movies is presented better in those movies than there are in any of the other movies. And that carries me through them, and every time I watch them, I feel good about myself and how things have gone. And that is, if you get that from this movie, don't let anyone take that from you. The second type of person that watches this is the ones who watched Force Awakens and then went into this one and came out feeling obliterated, just like something had been ripped out of their insides. They had questions that were looking to be answered, and none of it was answered. It sucks. It sucks. It does get easier with time, and usually bitterness. That is how I felt leaving Force Awakens, because I saw this coming. It does get easier with time, but I'm sorry. I know it really hurts to have this happen. The third group of people is the one that I just mentioned. Those of us, and we were a minority to begin with, but we seem to be growing, at least based on the internet, where you go into the movie and you come out and you're like, or we went into Force Awakens rather, and we came out and we're like, wow, that sucked. Terrible character development. None of these characters was any good. Kylo Ren was just whiny. My brother put it best when we left Force Awakens. He looks at me and he goes, Vader would be very disappointed in his grandchild. And that's essentially how I feel about it. I feel that Force Awakens was a very watered down remake of Star Wars. It kind of reminds me, there's one in the beginning, if you've never seen them, in the beginning of Jurassic World, where this little kid, it's a little ring with like movie cells in it, and you slide it into this thing and you look at a light and you flick through it and it flicks through cells. Well, as a kid, I had several that were Star Wars and I loved them. It reminded me of looking at one of those at a strobe light and flicking through it, because it was just lens flare after lens flare after lens flare and a bunch of weird things, and it made no sense. And people like me left Force Awakens just feeling gutted inside. We had this bad feeling about we had a bad feeling about this, and this movie kind of went into that, and it continued. And those of us who hated it to begin with are like, I saw this coming. I don't know what to do from here, though. That's the problem. I definitely recommend, if you hated it, don't go see it again. Now, granted, I know I'm a hypocrite. I went to go see it. I spent $5. I gave $5 to the Evil Empire. I'm sorry, but I felt I should actually see the movie before criticizing. And don't get me wrong, there were parts I liked. I thought the action sequences were pretty good. They didn't make a lot of sense, but the special effects were well done. They were better done than I expected them to be, because they looked bad in the trailer for some reason. There was no coherent storyline though, but it was a pretty film. But that was really kind of it. And there's probably more to this that's frustrating me. But those were the big ones. I've seen people argue and debate as to what's going on. I've seen people say that this is just people on the internet who are setting up bots to lower the Rotten Tomatoes score. If that were the case, there wouldn't be so many hatred videos. The videos of how many people hate this movie versus love this movie, to me, seem to be about even. So the Rotten Tomatoes score of 56%, which was what it was when I started this, seems about accurate, and I think that's going to go lower as people actually think about it more and more. I've seen a petition to redo Episode 8. Redoing Episode 8 is not going to happen. I hate to tell you. I'd love to see it happen, and if Disney thinks they can make more money off it, maybe they can. Maybe that's the trick. We got to convince Disney they'd make more money by redoing Episode 8, but honestly, you need to go back and redo Episode 7. For those people who are going, oh no, J.J. Abrams did a great job, it was Rian Johnson that screwed this up. J.J. Abrams is the executive producer, which means that he was aware.
No.
He knew what Johnson was doing.
It's not true.
He had to sign off on it.
That's impossible.
And honestly, this was probably the plan from the beginning.
Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
I know it hurts, I know it sucks, and I know you guys love J.J. Abrams, but he's a hack and he's a talentless shill that just steals stuff from other people. The one thing that got me, and this wasn't in the movie, and this made me smile, was as I was walking out. I'm walking out of the theater, and in the theater was weird because I was like maybe the 10th youngest person there, and I'm not that old, but everybody else was retirees, a group of like 6 teenagers, one little kid, and maybe like 1 or 2 other Star Wars people who were maybe my age. And I know they were Star Wars people because the one guy essentially looked like a Wookiee. He had hair everywhere, had his big Han Solo t-shirt on. The guy next to him had Star Wars. And they screamed Star Wars fans, and it was kind of adorable. But in the movie, nobody really clapped. Nobody laughed at the jokes. The Hux being trolled thing in the beginning I thought was funny, but it went on way too long. The first time he did it, Hux should have just been like, just fire. He shouldn't have been like, hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? That was just stupid. Just fire. He's being a prick. Also, since when does big starships not have fighters out to cover themselves from other smaller fighters? For that matter, since when... I mean, you had this fleet following them. Why don't you just cut them off? Why don't you send fighters to bomb them? It was just one ship. You should have had hundreds of fighters at your disposal. Just blow them up. But anyways, getting back to what I was saying, or editing what I was saying. Leaving the theater, nobody really seemed all that hyped up. I mean, there was a couple of the teenagers in the back. Like, 2 of them applauded twice during the movie, but they were the only 2 that did. Most of the jokes just fell flat. But as I'm leaving, the little kid is sitting there, and I'm like sort of overhearing, and he's humming the Star Wars theme. This kid's like 7 years old going, and that gave me hope. Not so much that this kid is going to fall for this movie, but that...
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
And that gives me hope. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. Good luck. Have fun. May the Force be with you. Christmas, and I just got back from going to see The Force Awakens. Wow, I f***ed up the first line. Awesome! I really want to be a part of this conversation, and in order for me to be... I don't like that camera angle. She was there pretty much just to bust Finn's... I don't want to say balls. Can I say balls on this? I don't think I can say balls on this. If you really wanted to do that, what you could have done is you could have had it been Akbar versus Finn. Okay? You could have had Finn and Akbar both have 2. Finn? It wasn't Finn. It was Poe. A lot of things look back at that, but a lot of people... This is hard. A lot of people are going to look at other things in the Star Wars universe and be like... It's on Tatooine. When Luke... That was more like that. Really? Really?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, this is Brad. Calling you from VT support. And the call is about your computer, okay?
Okay, what's wrong with my computer? Oh, this.
Look, whenever you are going online, doing some online activities, that point of time, some kind of unsecured program getting downloaded in the form of error and warning inside your computer without your knowledge and without your permission, okay?
Okay.
So this kind of infect may... Hello?
I'm here. Hello?
Sir, this kind of unsecured program can crash your computer at any point of time, okay?
Okay.
So...
He hung up! He hung up! Oh my god, he hung up! What a tool! Oh. Best part is, I'm a computer tech. I'm sure she'll sit there and be like, you know, where's a book? It was really poorly well thought. It was poorly well thought out. But English is hard. Learn to speak you must before teach you do. And that, which was weird because it hit on Phantom Menace, or not Phantom Menace. To begin with, they were kind of setting him up like the Empire. Or, like the Empire? That's going to be more bloopers than anything else.